September 11th, 2001. American skies are empty. Almost. As the nation reels, one of the only military aircraft in the air is a KC-135 tanker, flying directly toward the chaos over the burning Pentagon. The pilot, Jim Camp Jr., has just made a terrifying mistake. He can't authenticate his aircraft to the armed fighter jets scrambling to intercept him. In that moment of intense pressure, with friendly fighters viewing him as a potential threat, the trajectory of his life and career was changed forever. The pilot would eventually wear the 2 stars of Major General, but his greatest weapon as a leader wasn't found in a cockpit. It was a radical philosophy pioneered by his own father that challenges everything we believe about how agreements are made. A philosophy built on the power of a single word: no. Today we explore how leading and negotiating are fundamentally the same skill. We'll learn why hearing no is actually the beginning of an opportunity, and how his systematic approach allowed General Camp to navigate one of the most difficult leadership challenges of our time, the COVID vaccine mandate. Today, I have the distinct honor of welcoming someone I'm proud to call both a fellow Air Force veteran and a friend, Jim Camp Jr. Jim, welcome to Voice for Valor.
Welcome to Voice for Valor, the podcast where we explore the extraordinary journeys of those who've served our nation. I'm your host, Mike Morris. Today, I have the distinct honor of welcoming someone I'm proud to call both a fellow Air Force veteran and a friend, Jim Camp Jr. Jim has lived a remarkable life of service that spans over 3 decades in uniform, culminating as a commanding general in the Ohio Air National Guard. But Jim's story is far from typical. On September 11th, 2001, he found himself piloting one of the very few military aircraft in American skies during our nation's darkest hours, a mission that would change the trajectory of his life and his career. Beyond his military service, Jim comes from a family that revolutionized the art of negotiation. His father, Jim Camp Sr., authored the influential book Start With No, challenging conventional wisdom about how agreements are reached. Now, Jim Jr. has written his own book, Lead From No, a systematic approach to leadership negotiation, bridging his military leadership experience with the negotiation system that's helped organizations secure deals worth billions. Today, we explore how leading and negotiating are fundamentally the same skill, why hearing no is actually the beginning of an opportunity, and how a systematic approach can transform how we build agreements with those we lead. Jim, welcome to Voice for Valor. It's great to have you here, my friend.
It's great to see you again.
Absolutely, sir. It's such an honor to have you here. I remember when I was a young major and you were a colonel, and here we are 10 years later. I'm a retired colonel and you are a retired 2-star Major General. That's quite the accomplishment. So you and I go back, our days serving together in the Air Force. For our listeners, just meeting you for the first time, take us through that journey from your early days in uniform to eventually wearing stars as a commanding general.
Okay. Well, like we were discussing earlier, what's interesting when people join the military, there's a lot of circumstances that will typically push them in that direction. For me, when I was in college, I really didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do. I was, considering aviation, but I really didn't have a passion for that. And then I saw this movie, and everybody's going to laugh, but I saw Top Gun. And I remember calling Jim Sr., who was an Air Force pilot himself when I was in college. And I said, "Hey, Dad, I figured out what I'm going to do. I'm going to go fly jets." And he kind of chuckled at first. And he's, because I didn't have the best GPA in the world at Carnegie Mellon, but I certainly took his advice, followed his guidance. And I had a couple of friends of his that were a colonel in the Air Force, L.A. Bienvenu, who basically reached out and said, "Hey, Jim, if you want to do this, here's the steps you have to take." So I did that while I was in college, and I joined the Ohio Air National Guard, originally to fly A-7s. So I was real excited about that. I wasn't really interested in flying heavies, but as luck has it, when you're a young man, you don't realize when you put on the uniform, service before self, right? So I went off to pilot training, and halfway through pilot training, found out that we were going to convert to KC-135s. So there at Rickenbacker at the 121st Air Refueling Wing. So that was my home for about 25 years. So I came back flying part-time in the Air National Guard, flying tankers. And, like most young aviators, I was really focused on not just being good at my job, but I wanted to try to secure a job in the airline business. That's what I thought I wanted to do. So I did that. I got hired by United in 1997, flew for them for, a period of time. But all the while I was doing that, Jim Camp Sr., who actually resigned from FedEx in his early 50s, which is unheard of, became a negotiation expert and started working on his book. So I worked with him for, the late 90s is when I really started while I was trying to get my airline job. And once I started flying for the airline, we were kind of firing on all cylinders with the business. I was coaching negotiation with him, selling his training and coaching, flying for United, and then also flying quite a bit in the Guard. In fact, I was so busy that I decided I was going to let one of those three things go. And believe it or not, I communicated to my leadership at Rickenbacker that I was going to take the uniform off. So my plan was to get out of the military 1 October, so a month after 9/11. And then obviously 9/11 happened. Really tragic day, but it was a turning point for me. Didn't really realize it at the time, but I remember when I landed after that sortie over the Pentagon on 9/11, I walked into my commander's office and I said, "Hey, I know we're going to deploy now, and I better be the first guy on your list." And he saw my intensity, because I'm typically an intense guy. And he said, "Okay, be careful what you wish for." So deployment after deployment, we got really busy. No fly zone in Turkey for a while for a big deployment. And then, of course, we deployed a couple of days before Operation Iraqi Freedom kicked off in the Middle East. So I did that, jumped into aviation wholeheartedly with the military, and believe it or not, decided about the time I was a major, I had 16 years in 2006, and I called United Airlines and told them that I was going to resign, which my friends, my family, even my father was kind of shocked. Like, "You sure about that? I mean, you're giving up a pretty big career." And I said, "No, I'd rather coach negotiation and be a leader in the military," because I was a major at the time. And I said, "Hey, I only got 4 years left." Right. So I'll have my 20 in 2010. And then one thing I'll say that we talked about before, every person I've ever met that's joined the military, they have a plan, and they're pretty confident on how it's going to play out. And I have a son in the Marine Corps who and I don't think he's ready to take the uniform off either. And he wouldn't have predicted that. These people in the military can't predict what they're going to do, right? Things come at them, and next thing you know, 34 years later, I just retired last March and did things that I never imagined I would do. It was just an incredible journey.
Isn't it so odd that folks in the military, you walk in, for instance, my youngest son, he's scared of public speaking. In the military, they push you into these uncomfortable environments, knowing that you were going to grow and develop out of them. And so I specifically remember us having a conversation. I was a major and you were a colonel. We were on the phone and we were struggling with something that we're going to talk about later in this podcast. But you were like, "Mike, I've had it. I don't know why I'm still doing this when all these people are pushing against us." And both of us were just totally outside of our comfort zone when it came from you being, I think you were the chief of staff for the Ohio Air National Guard when you came out to work with us at Guard Bureau.
Well, I was a squadron commander flying tankers, which was kind of my goal, to make squadron command, and a 2-star general at Beetler Armory, which is our headquarters in Ohio, said, "Hey, I want you to come learn personnel and be the deputy director of human resources." And then I eventually became the director of human resources, but that was really tough, stepping out of the airplane, because I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a pilot. What am I doing working in personnel? But actually, when you and I met, I was pretty passionate about the pilot problem that we had back then, and was just getting doors shut on our face. I mean, they weren't even really willing to talk to us at first. And I remember the frustration we both had. And I just remember saying, "Well, I tell you what, I'm just going to hop on a military airplane, show up there in DC, and knock on doors until somebody would listen to us." So yeah, that was predicted that, right? I would have never voluntarily agreed, I thought, to leave flying an airplane to go into something I knew nothing about, which was personnel. But thank goodness I did. I learned more in that time period in my military career, and I was challenged. Right? I learned more there than I would have if I stayed in the cockpit. So I'm really glad I took that step. It paid off for me, but that was a challenge. Doing something you're uncomfortable with is not easy.
They pushed you into HR. They pushed me into A1, which is manpower as well, and rated management. So here I am trying to figure out pilot bonuses, retentions, how many pilots we need to send to pilot training. Totally outside of my comfort zone, right? I've been flying C-17s, I've been flying MQ-1s out of Las Vegas, and now I'm in this personnel world, and I was the only pilot amongst 100 people on this personnel floor. So much so that they used to tease me whenever I wore my flight suit. They're like, "Oh, hey buddy, you're gonna fly that desk today?" I'm like, "Well, occasionally I have to wear it because everything else is at the cleaners."
I don't know if you remember this, but I found myself as the only director of human resources, which every state in the Guard has one. I was the only one that was a pilot, and everybody was like, "Well, what are they doing putting a pilot in charge of human resources?" And I remember when you and I went up there to DC, I said, "Hey Mike, let's leave the flight suits at home," and we wore. And I remember I could have worn my flight suit, but I never did, because I wanted to make sure I was, meeting my folks at the ground level. So yeah, I know how you felt, but it was interesting because our two unique skill sets brought us together to handle what I think was one of the biggest strategic problems that the Guard was facing. And I'm really thankful that worked out.
I completely agree with you. And before I get too far into what we accomplished from a pilot perspective, a lot of our folks are interested in 9/11, and so I wanted to just circle back to where you are flying to the Pentagon after it's been attacked. Can you talk the typical person that's just sitting a passenger, on that United Airlines flight? Can you describe to them what that is like to be flying that KC-135 to the Pentagon, seeing the
Yeah, it
the
was,
wreckage below?
yeah, no, it was surreal. I mean, I remember I was in Newark, New Jersey, 2 days before 9/11. Basically, co-pilot on a 767, right? So I was there. Can't really too much into it. In fact, I didn't really mention it in my book, but I verified with the FBI, we did have a couple of folks on our aircraft. They were jump seating with fake airline credentials trying to gain intelligence. So that was when I woke up on September 11th and drove into Rickenbacker's normal training day. I, how it is when you're not on the flying schedule, but I knew if I showed up, I could jump on a flight and get some training done. So I walked into the flight room. But when I pulled up to the gate, I noticed there was I listened to the radio on the way to work and I heard, an airplane hit the first tower. I think I was listening to Howard Stern. And I thought to myself, some small aircraft, right? Who knows what happened? Maybe it was intentional, maybe it wasn't. But I heard the first tower was hit, but it didn't concern me that much because I didn't understand the scope. But by the time I got to the front gate was on lockdown, and I went into the flight room. And about the time I walked in, not long after that, the second airplane hit, and that's when all of us knew that it was deliberate. We knew that this was a game changer. And obviously, it's very close for me, right? I mean, I'm getting ready to leave the military. I'm a pilot for United, and we just lost, two. We ended up losing 2 United aircraft that day. I didn't know any of the crew members, but obviously it's it's a terrible feeling. And, watching the responders on television and just what the American people were going through, I just turned over and looked over my shoulder, and squadron commander walked in and said, "Hey, Jim, grab a co-pilot, grab a boom operator, take the alert aircraft to the Pentagon right now." Like right now. No flight orders, no crew brief, nothing. So we scrambled as fast as we could to get out to the airplane. And I remember we typically takes about an hour to pre-flight a KC-135, and I think we were airborne in 20 minutes, which is really fast. I know that we forgot a few of our checklist items because we were in such a rush. In fact, the takeoff warning horn was going off as I'm rolling down the runway full of fuel, and looked down, saw the speed brakes were up, so I pushed the speed brake lever down. It was just up a little. We rotated, and the guy's like, "Hey, you guys are cleared east, any altitude, any airspeed." And that was kind of eerie, right? Being basically one of the only aircraft airborne east of the Mississippi because of our response time. I mean, we happened to have an airplane on alert, so that's a really good, it's cocked on and ready to go. And as we were approaching, I could see the smoke from a distance, and immediately Giant Killer came up, the Northeastern Defense Sector, and asked us to authenticate, verify who we were. And he had a pretty serious tone in his voice. And then I realized I blew it. I didn't blame my boom operator because he was young, but we didn't grab our secrets out of the command post. So we're flying in the blind. We have no way of authenticating. And that was a pretty stressful moment for us. I consider that a negotiation at the time. But I basically, sometimes the most effective way to negotiate is to tell the truth. And in the clear, I just said, "Hey, this is Captain Jim Camp. This is what I did. I made a huge mistake. I didn't grab my secrets. I'm full of gas and I'm going to lower the boom." And I looked at the Viper flight lead at the time, and because they had launched on alert, and I gave him the refueling signal with my left hand and popped him a salute. And because I think they were breathing heavy, they were like, "What are we going to do with this tanker? We can't verify who they are." And as you know, that's not a good situation. My co-pilot was white. He was white as he's a full colonel now, but he was white as a sheet. And I just said, "I'll take the radios. I'll handle it." So we did our mission. Then we were speechless on the way home. Nobody talked. I mean, it was just, we were trying to mentally process what just happened, right? And seeing the Pentagon on a clear day, we weren't very high. I mean, I could see everything, all the responders. It's an image that I'll never forget. And obviously it drove my decision-making for a long time. So it was a heck of a day.
One of our fellow aviators, General Sasseville, he was one of those F-16s that was following Flight 93
Right.
and was directed, if it turned back towards, a populated area, to take down that aircraft. So to think about those F-16 pilots, and here they are looking at a U.S. KC-135 aircraft that's not able to respond through classified means. I mean, they were probably just as sweaty in the seat as you guys were.
For sure. I was expecting to be escorted at a minimum, right? But then they realized I don't know. I think when you just say, "Hey, I blew it, guys. It's on me." And and I even said we did everything we could to get here as quick as we could. I mean, we were flying as fast as we could go to get there. It's just one of those things. Very fortunate it worked out. But yeah, I can't imagine what General Sasseville and I have discussed his thing briefly. don't get to talk to him much, but I have met him a couple times. And yeah, that's just an incredible, heavy situation.
Well, indeed it is. And he's my new boss. So I work at George Mason University in the Rapid Prototype Research Center, and he's my boss. So I get to see him all the time. And he's just a remarkably humble man. He is. It's been such an honor to work with him in uniform and now out of uniform, working in the academia world.
Right.
But to Jim, earlier, you were talking about your dad's book. And then now I wanted to ask about your book. I've watched commanders get selected throughout my career, as you have as well. And I know it's rarely a straight path. You mentioned hearing no several times before getting your first command assignment. Tell me about one of those no moments that actually opened a better door for you.
Okay. So my first, you'll find this kind of funny because I know you dealt with the Air Force PT test, right? I mean, we all have to do that. And I had issues with my Achilles. I severed my Achilles, but there was a squadron commander interview. So my first opportunity to jump at command at Rickenbacker. And the doctor told me, don't run on your leg. But the rule was if you didn't have a current PT test, you're not going to be able to apply. So I went out and did a PT test. I passed, but I basically limped across the finish line. My wing commander was like, what are you doing? I go, well, I want to interview for this job. If they'd have told me I would have finished third in the interview, I probably wouldn't have, or disattached my Achilles again. So anyway, I interviewed for that, didn't get it, but I wanted to participate in the interview process. I wanted to see kind of where I stood. And that was a really good eye-opening moment for me because I was able to negotiate feedback. I said, hey, I know you told me no, but it's really important to me. I just want to understand where I'm falling short, what I need to work on. What do you see as, a good path for me? And the feedback I got was incredibly honest. It hurt. I was told that I was too intense. The people were afraid of me because I, very competitive, and I didn't like it when people weren't accountable. And, so I was kind of a loud dog in the yard, so to speak. And I took that to heart. And then I had an opportunity right after that. I went down to the 745th squadron down in AFSOC, which was a Guard C-26 squadron. I had a chance to go fly with those folks and deployed. And ironically, when I was deployed in Afghanistan, the commander back home decided to hang it up, went back to their Guard unit. And there was a lot of, turmoil in the C-26 community because the Air Force announced they were going to divest the aircraft while we were deployed. And a lot of them didn't really have a full-time billet because it was a provisional squadron. I know it's hard to explain, but essentially they were afraid of losing their job. So they asked me, the airmen in Afghanistan said, hey, you need to put in for this job. And I said, well, how do I do that? I'm deployed in Afghanistan. And I decided I'd pick up the phone and call the commander of the AFSOC training center. So I did, and was able to be offered a job on that phone call. And he said, I'll meet you at the jet when you get home. So that was my first command, right? And it was kind of by accident, but I'm really glad I did because that was an incredible experience. Great airmen. I mean, these folks were just, they should write a book about the 745th. What those folks did in Iraq and Afghanistan was just unprecedented. We were the go-to manned ISR unit with all special forces. We had a great reputation. Then I came back to Rickenbacker, right? And I had this really good OPR. And, it's a performance rating for those that don't know. And I was stratified by a 3-star. So I had a 3-star general say, this guy's my number one squadron commander and the associated units in the Guard. And I think there were 20 of them at the time. So when I came home, again, not humble enough, discovered that I was not a shoo-in for the flying squadron command job. I interviewed for it, did not get the job, was pretty upset. So that's my second no. And I essentially, called the guy that got the job. His name, he's now Major General Dave Johnson. He's the ATAG in Ohio. So he replaced me. We're very good friends, but at the time we were staunch competitors. And I called him and said, hey, I'll support you as your operations officer. So I was his number 2 for a while. And then the OSS squadron command position that I got turned down for the first time opened up, and I was able to slide in there. While I was in that position and trying to figure out, where do I go next? I was turned down again for a group command. So I applied to be a group commander in the mission support group up at Mansfield. Didn't get that job, got a bunch of feedback. And the feedback I got there was, hey, Jim, maybe you should think about doing something other than flying airplanes. So the door closed and I said, you know what? Okay. And I remember filling out this little questionnaire that I thought nobody will ever read this thing. I said I was willing to go to state headquarters. And General Mark Bartman, he was the ATAG at the time, called me and he said, hey, I want to talk to you about becoming the Deputy Human Resources Director. So I drove up there to talk to him. We had a conversation. And by the time I got home back to Rickenbacker, I had an email saying, you're being command directed to the Deputy HRO position at Valor. Congratulations, you have 30 days to report. So just like that, the advice that I took from not getting my third command job, go do something to broaden yourself. I said I was willing to do that. General Bartman picked up on that, saw my OPR and said, okay, you're coming to headquarters. And at the time it was tough to swallow. So
I feel like the Air Force does a disservice from a leadership perspective compared to the Army. I just recently interviewed a Apache helicopter pilot, and he's put in these leadership positions as a first lieutenant. Whereas in the Air Force, we're that weapon system expert for so long that, you going to get this HR experience, I imagine it just opened your eyes to so many other opportunities out there. And it was a reminder that people are the mission. What do you think about that?
yeah, people are absolutely the mission. And I tell you what, I have another saying. I always tell people this: when you start to feel really comfortable in any job, any leadership role, whether you're director of personnel, squadron commander, when you start to feel comfortable, that's when you have to be ready to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's when it's time to roll, right? That's when it's time to go push yourself, learn about different things. And I'll tell you what, when I left headquarters, I was given the option to be the wing commander at my old unit at the 121st, or the wing commander at Mansfield. So I was able to bypass group command and vice. And I chose Mansfield because I wanted to be able to reinvent myself. I wanted to be able to start fresh from all the mistakes I've made in the past. So I was able to jump in up there at Mansfield. And that was a challenge, right? Because nobody knew me. So I had a whole different set of problems. The fact is, the higher you go, the more rocks you're putting in your backpack. And the reason it's a heavy climb is because you care about your people. If you don't care about your people and you're worried about your next job, then, if I were in charge for a day, if I could find those that were more worried about their self-promotion than taking care of their people, I would pull them aside and say, hey, if you're not worried about your folks, maybe it's time to move on, because it's not about you. It's everything but you. So I find that real interesting.
And people see right through that. When I was a OSS commander down in Charlotte, North Carolina, I spent my weekends thinking about ways to improve my airmen's life, whether that was trying to figure out creative leadership opportunities for them, schools for them to go to, self-development programs. And my wife was like, God, this is like a full-time job. I mean, I figured I would see you on the weekends. Back in the C-17 days, you were gone for 2 weeks, you're home for 2 weeks, you're gone for 2 weeks. She's like, this new OSS command job, it's 24/7. And I just said, caring for people, it's a never-ending job. And it was just so satisfying. So, I mean, yeah. And I think that I would not have been as comfortable or as successful in that job if it hadn't been for being in rated management and working that personnel side and understanding the moving parts of the people.
Yeah, same here. That the advantage of learning personnel was by far the most important aspect for me to go take on a wing, hands down. So
you've lived. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I'm just incredibly grateful for General Bartman saying, hey, I got an idea. Watch this. Watch how this guy handles this. And I'm just glad that it worked out.
One door closed, another open, and this one ended up being the best door of all. So
Sure.
you've lived these two completely different separate worlds, right? You've got your military leadership and you have your negotiation coaching. Most people would see these as completely separate skills. When was that light bulb moment when you realized they're actually the same thing?
Well, I would say from about the time I stepped into command, especially, or even on staff deployment, right? So I threw my hat in the ring for a lot of deployments as a staff officer. But when I stepped into command, I kind of had an advantage that I didn't realize how impactful the advantage was. But you know how when we fly airplanes or any skill set in the military, you're trained in a systematic way to do things, right? And it's ingrained in you, right? Boldface when you're a pilot, being able to memorize your boldface under duress, in a stressful situation was a great advantage that we gained, that emotional control as aviators. What I discovered when I was a commander is that I had multiple agreements going on around me 24/7. So having a background in negotiation with a systematic approach to negotiation. So I'm not going to say that it's comparable to, flying an airplane, but I had a systematic way of processing the agreement in my mind of who's the decision maker, what are the problems, and I would run through my checklist in my head that we use coaching negotiation today, even today, and I would kind of break the problem down, and that helped me separate emotionally from the actual issue that I was dealing with, and I started to discover that I was negotiating every day. And I would argue that, look, I wasn't the best student in the world. I was a pretty good pilot. I think I'm a pretty good natural leader, but I would have never gone through the progression that I did in my career without that systematic negotiation approach in place. And so I was negotiating all the time. And as I started to near the end of my career, I had many people telling me, because I would handle problems in a closed door setting with my closest confidants, right? And I'd say, look, here's a checklist that we're going to use for this meeting. And I would break it down in a systematic way based on a mindset, a structure of the system and behaviors. Here's how we're going to behave and handle the situation. If I didn't have that in place, there's no way I would have gone to the level I did, because I wasn't that nobody in the state of Ohio ever expected that I would end up, as fortunate as I was as a 2-star. I just never imagined it. Nobody did. But I credit it to having a systematic approach to negotiation, like ingrained in me. It was a habit pattern. And then after some long conversations with my family and a lot of friends, we have a lot of clients. If I say the word negotiation, most people would say they start to think of, okay, a business deal. It's a sales negotiation, a procurement negotiation, a contract negotiation. Maybe it's an acquisition or it's a merger. There's labor negotiations, right? I did a little bit of that as HR, right? Dealing with labor unions. So there's all forms of negotiation. And it just occurred to me one day that probably the most popular form of negotiation is leadership. Leadership is a form of negotiation. And here's why. If you break the word negotiation down and you truly define what it means, it's an agreement between 2 or more parties with all parties having the right to veto. So it's 2 or more parties putting forth effort to reach an agreement, and everybody has the right to say no. If you're a leader and you take your followers for granted, that's a very fragile agreement. And I would say it's reinforced almost on a daily basis as a leader. I've watched people leave organizations left and right because they're not inspired by their boss. They don't feel connected to their leaders, right? And the leaders think they know everything. And I developed a saying that leadership is not about your rank, title, position, or authority. Leadership is about connecting with your folks, understanding what drives their behavior, and reaching agreements. And if you're not willing to give them the right to say no, you're missing a huge opportunity, because you know as well as I do, if you get an order from a boss in the military, you're going to follow that order, correct?
Absolutely.
But when you're operating in the gray, and there maybe needs to be a policy change, or we're going to completely turn directions, for example, and we're all of a sudden shifting our total focus to China. That requires, like General C.Q. Brown, I got to work with him in the Pacific for a month. Incredible leader. And when I saw the way he was able to manage change and help those people decide to do that, he wasn't telling them to do it. He was helping them understand why it was important to make that shift. He was negotiating with them. And he came to Mansfield one day, and this was really the catalyst for me. And he looked at all of our airmen at the 179th. They've shifted from C-130s to new cyber missions. And as the ATAG in Ohio, I was part of that decision. And I told him, we got to do this. This is a cutting edge thing. We've got to do it. I know it's painful losing airplanes, so that I wasn't well liked for a little while there because I was in support of that. But when he was talking to our airmen, he said something really interesting to me. He goes, look, as airmen, regardless of your rank, stay respectful. You have your chain of command. I need you to feel confident to push ideas up the chain of command. And he said, you're going to hear the word no over and over and over. He goes, do not let that dissuade you. That's just a decision. He goes, somebody's going to tell you no, but if you really help analyze why it's important, next thing you know, you're going to get an exception to policy. Next thing you know, the policy is going to change. And then down the road, somebody's going to say, why the heck haven't we been doing it this way for the last 20 years? Because that's what innovation is. It's you having the courage to hear the word no.
I wish we worked together more, because I feel the exact same way. I enjoy having people in the room that disagree with me. I enjoy the back and forth argument because it provides buy-in. I can't tell you how many meetings I've come to or gone to where the leader above me already had a predetermined solution, plan of action, but just, sidebar, hey, come on in, we're going to have a meeting. What do you guys think about this? Knowing that our input didn't matter. So we didn't have buy-in, which makes it much more difficult to execute the policy that the leader's trying to implement. And so, yeah, having that opportunity to disagree, I mean, hey, you disagree? Like you said, the answer's still no. Thank you so much for your input. At the next meeting, I full on expect you to come with other ideas. The answer still may be no, but don't lose faith in the program or the process just by the leader saying no. I love that.
Yeah, I think I had 5 executive officers when I was serving as a general, and they all knew. They learned the hard way that it was just a matter of time. I'm gonna put them on the spot. And I already think I know the direction. Sometimes you go into a meeting and you go, okay, this is the direction I want to go, but I want everybody to collaborate with me, and I want to help get buy-in. I want to create vision of why they should reach an agreement to follow this and really truly believe in it. And I thought I knew the answer, and I would wait and hope that somebody else would come up with the answer. And I'd go, you know what? If it were you, Mike, I'd say, Mike, that's a great idea. We're going to look into that. I think that's the direction we're going to go. I always like to do that because it made them feel a part of it. But there were times actually where I really thought the direction I was going to go was very clear. And a couple of my executive officers, I'd pull them aside and say, hey, tell me what you think about this. And it took them a while to get the confidence to say, sir, are you out of your mind? That's not a good idea, and here's why. And I'm like, well, tell me more, keep going. And they knew that if I was pretty determined, I would tell them no. And I said, don't take offense to that. I really appreciate your feedback. But every single one of them at one point or another helped bail me out of something that would have been a colossal mistake and, take a different approach. So you're only as good as the people you put around you. But if you don't use the people you put around you truly, and you truly feel deep down that you need those people around you, if you really think you're sitting up on high and you have all the answers, that's not a growth mindset, and then hubris can develop, and that's not a good thing either. The further I went with leadership, the more humbled I became. And and that's why I stuck with it for so long. My parents, my dad, my brother, everybody, partners in the negotiation business are like, what are you doing? You've got your 20, come back. And I said, guys, I'm having fun. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what it was all about. Yeah. So no regrets.
Good for you, sir.
Yep.
Earlier, you briefly mentioned your 4 steps, but your negotiation checklist has these 4 steps that seem deceptively simple, actually. But I'm curious, which steps trip you up the most as in a leader's capacity when you're first trying to implement your system?
So the first thing we do, after we gain internal alignment, right? So before we go negotiate, you go through a process of what we call critical research, which isn't a required step, but it's one of the things that I work with my clients on. Let's do some critical research. Who are we negotiating with? What is it that you folks want from the deal? We've got to get aligned on that, right? We're not going to just pick something and then hope we meet in the middle. That doesn't work. We'll talk about that hopefully later. But what's our critical research? Let's get aligned. And then once we get aligned, we shift to our opponent's world, right? So the very first thing we do, and this is hard, this is the hardest, but it's the foundation of every negotiation that I've coached. It's the foundation of every agreement I've really been in, is what's our mission and purpose? Our mission and purpose is not for our gain. It's not the results that we're looking for. So it sounds a little confusing, but it's what are we trying to help the other side, the person we're negotiating with? I use the word opponent. That's not a negative, right? My 6-year-old grandson is a staunch opponent of mine, right? Kids are the best negotiators, by the way. But what are we trying to help the other side see and discover so that how they benefit from the agreement that we're seeking? It's not about us, it's about them. So how do we identify the mission and purpose? Like our mission and purpose, talking to the teams up in DC about the pilot problem, we were trying to help them see and discover that by implementing a change to the policy of retaining technician instructor pilots, they could avoid catastrophic accidents in the future, which would maintain our readiness, save lives, and provide long-term reliability and sustainability for the Air National Guard pilot force, period. That's not to our benefit, but we have to help them see it. And you can't tell anybody anything. You almost, I don't know if you remember this, but we had to ask questions to help them discover what the problem was. Right? When we look at the database, Mike and Jim, and all our positions are filled. I said, yeah, I understand that, but what's the experience level of all those positions? What's their tenure? How long have they been there? Well, we don't know. Well, is there a way to find that out? No, we're going to have to do that the hard way. But I remember when they plotted the experience, it should be a healthy bell curve of experience. We had a U. We were hollow in the middle, which means we had a train wreck coming. So our mission and purpose was to help them see and discover through their eyes, their idea, not me presenting and being, because you know how if we just go at them and say, we got a huge problem, well, they'll say, well, where's the vision? Like, I don't see the emotional vision of benefit here. So there's 4 reasons why people don't say yes. It's either they don't see it, they don't see the real problem, they don't see the benefit of fixing it, or they don't have the data to back it up. Or in our case, we found out a lot of them didn't have the level of authority, right? That's a big risk. They didn't have level of authority to make the change, or they're bluffing, but I think the hardest one for leadership of those 4 is creating that initial vision, the initial mission and purpose of what you're trying to help that individual see. So as a leader, that's one of the first things you have to figure out, but you can't just tell them, you got to help them see it for themselves. In business, and this is what's really amazing, that first step is exactly what we're coaching our clients to do before a business merger or a meeting. Quit worrying about your results. How are you going to help the other side with this deal? It doesn't mean you're giving things away, but what angle are you using to help them figure this out to see, okay, this might be beneficial for me as well. So that's the hardest one, is creating that vision.
I wish I'd read your dad's book, and then your book didn't exist at the time, but I wish it did, because I specifically remember one person that we were arguing with, she was saying, pilots make so much money, it's disgusting. We don't need to change the number. And I was explaining, I said, well, economics, 101, supply and demand, there's far little supply and a huge demand for these pilots. So we have to meet that need. Me personally, I was thinking, okay, what's the win-win situation? So where everybody's happy. Can you talk about win-win in your methodology?
Sure. So what you just mentioned with the very nice young lady. I mean, and these were great people that we were.
Of course, they mean well, but it was difficult.
Absolutely. So in our second step in our checklist is, okay, after we have our mission and purpose, we have to analyze the problems. Problems are anything that's going to hinder us from reaching an agreement, right? So that's the first thing we're going to deal with. And underneath problems, we look at emotional baggage. So in that case, she had emotional baggage that pilots make too much money. Does that make sense? I mean, we almost have to put that on the table before we get into go any deeper. Now, I mentioned results earlier. And if I ask you, what can you truly control? There's only two things that are valid goals. If I set out to negotiate to get a win-win deal, how can I manage somebody else's win when I don't even have the ability to control my own win? Negotiation is a human performance event. It's no different than public speaking, right? I used to have a executive officer that would grade me because I was terrified of speaking in front of crowds. I'm not anymore, but back then I was nervous. I hated it, right?
Once again, getting you out of your comfort zone. Look how much you've developed because of that.
Correct. But I couldn't control the win or the loss. I can't control whether or not I won that speech. Was it really good? Maybe not. Sometimes I hit it out of the park, but a lot of times that was because I just went from the heart. So that's what I learned. Quit rehearsing and just go from the gut, because people trust that. So I can't manage my wins and losses. We can practice all day long. We could go buy a professional football team right now, hire the best coaches, practice all day long. Are we guaranteed to win the Super Bowl? No. So what can we manage? And the same thing holds true. How do I manage the win of the other side? What, do I have to give something away to make them happy? That's what everybody believes. And compromise is deeply rooted in our country's mindset about negotiation. Our company helps people avoid unnecessary compromise. We don't say compromise doesn't happen, but compromise is a mindset that's deeply ingrained. If I say, if you were to say to me, hey, Jim, I don't want to buy your product, it's too expensive. Believe it or not, a lot of high-powered business people today, if they hear that, really talented people go, okay, well, where can we cut costs? How much margin can we afford to give away? And then they do it. And what's really sick about compromise is the moment you start doing it, your opponent expects more and more and more. And next thing you know, you got your win-win deal, but you just gave everything away. So is that really a win? So
you're diluting your product, and
yeah, and you're not answering just to yourself. There's people that run those companies. I always say, well, who do you work for? When I'm in a room of executives and they look around and they go, well, my boss is over there. My other boss is over there. I'm like, no, you don't work for your bosses. You work for your people, and you work for their families. That's the whole point of going to work and building a company, is to make other people successful. So two things, activity and behavior. We can control when we show up at the practice field. We can control how we prepare for a deal. We can control our decision-making. We can also control our demeanor, our level of respect, and our posture. We don't use threats. We don't use leverage. We don't use take it or leave it. That's all amateur. When we see that, when we coach teams and the other side is behaving that way, we love it, because we're going to take advantage of that. Let them talk. Let them think they're special. Because you know what? If they're seeking a win-win deal, they're going to give away more than they think. So to me, and this is when Jim Sr. wrote Start With No, it was like a shot heard around the world in the academic community, in the negotiation arena. What do you mean win-win is garbage? And that's exactly why, because I can't control my win, and I got to make assumptions about what I have to give away to get the win on the other side. So win-win to me, it might happen. You may actually have a deal where it does work out that way, but you certainly can't seek it. You can't. And what happens, I'll go further. If you have a 3-2 count and you're at the plate and you're a little league hitter, and your coach looks at you and says, Mike, you got to get a hit, buddy. If you don't, we're going to lose a game. Is that going to help you control your breathing? Is that going to help you, your activity?
No, I'm tightening up. I was already nervous at a 3-2 count. Now I'm really nervous.
When people get super nervous about achieving the results of a win-win deal, they're actually hamstringing their activity and how they behave. And then they come across as needy. And the same thing holds true as a leader. If you're too desperately trying to seek approval, you're not willing to be humble, you're not willing to make fun of yourself every chance you get, and you're really like losing your temper over something, and your troops or if they see it, you lose their respect, right? You can't behave that way. Same thing holds in negotiations. So the more I dug into this, painful year writing this book, but the interconnected tissue here, I personally think every leader, their number one competency is their ability to reach agreements and sustain agreements with their people, period.
You mentioning respect leads me into my next question perfectly, especially from a leadership perspective. You were obviously leading a larger group of people than I was, but we both had to be leaders during COVID. So during that COVID vaccine mandate period, it was brutal for military leaders. You're standing in front of airmen who are ready to throw away their careers over whether they're going to take the shot or not. Take us into those town halls. What was the energy in the room like for you as a leader trying to maintain that respect amongst that group?
Yeah. So before we went into the town halls, our team had to get aligned. So we had obviously a commander's meeting, and I remember a couple of folks, and I love these people. These people are my friends now that we're not serving together. But they were like, wait a minute, time out. What do you mean we're going to negotiate with our airmen? I said, we're going to negotiate with our airmen. We're going to give them the right to say no. And they said, well, wait a minute, the Secretary of Defense, we have a mandate that on this day, I think it was December, if they're not vaccinated, then we start the discharge process. I said, that's correct. I'm not disputing that, but we have 90 days. And whether we like it or not, this is such an emotionally charged decision that until we can get the emotion out of the decision-making process the best we can, we're not going to be able to let them make a good intellectual decision. So we've also learned that in our system, that best decisions are always made when you're at a neutral emotional stance. So if they're extremely negative and they're not going to do it, and we had airmen standing up on their desk and threatening, I'm taking the uniform off now, and that was kind of contagious. It was a lot of folks thought it was not the time to be nurturing and respectful. But I remember going into those town halls, and I had Chief Heidi Bunker beside me, thank goodness. And I said, hey, keep me nurturing, right? I don't want to lose it on them, but I got to say, look, now's the time to talk about it. If you're not going to take the shot, that's okay. That's your decision. I can give you an order, but at the end of the day, if they want to break up with us, if they want to leave the ranks, they can do it, right? We can't. There's not much we can do other than say, hey, we're going to make you take the uniform off. But I made a deal with them. I said, as long as all of you stay respectful and you're not spreading, contagious opinions, I said, if we get to the end of this and you truly decide to take the uniform off and you say no, that's okay. But if you've behaved respectfully, I personally will do everything I can in my career to help you, including letting you get back in the military if things change. But we have to face this problem. So I broke it down into a checklist, gave them the right to say no. And when they said no, here's the power of giving somebody the right to say no. If you mean it, and when they do say no, out of respect, they will tell you what's behind their decision. So every no that I heard, it was either they didn't see the vision of benefit of doing it. Why should I get the shot? What's the benefit? Well, working at Transcom as an advisor there, I knew that we weren't going to be able to deploy people around the world at a moment's notice because we have to traverse a bunch of countries. And if they require a vaccine mandate, we're not getting in. So maybe that was something I would ask questions, how are we going to accomplish this global deployment posture? If Russia decides to shoot the Slovakian Gap, what happens? What if we can't get into place? I mean, you guys were just in Estonia, our 180th fighter wing. How are we going to do this? Oh, well, maybe, yeah, I see that as a problem. Then maybe it's the data. The second reason people don't say yes, they didn't have the data to back up in their mind whether or not the shot was safe. So maybe it was a matter of educating them and providing them data when they're not as fueled emotionally, but they were allowed to make a decision. And the brain is an interesting thing. When you make a decision, you immediately transition to intellect. And then they have to justify their decision. Well, let's find out what's behind their decision. And then the lack of authority. Believe it or not, there was a lot of airmen that didn't have the authority to make the decision to roll up their sleeve. I had one airman come to me and he said, if I take the shot, my wife is going to divorce me and she won't have children with me.
Oh, wow.
And she meant it. And he was in tears when he told me that. I had another airman tell me if I take the shot, my parents are going to kick me out of the house because I'm going against their political beliefs. So we assume that they have the ability to make the decision, but what's going on behind the scenes? Who else is impacting their decisions? Same thing in a business negotiation, right? Who's impacting decisions? And then the fourth reason was they're bluffing. And when it came down to it, and the best way to call somebody's bluff was tell them the truth. And at the very final moment, I think my last town hall, I just said, look, if you're telling me that you're not going to take the shot, because I took mine, did I want to take it? No, but I did. I was a leader. I had to do it. And, I've been shot to so many things on so many deployments. I didn't even know if they were putting in me.
I thought the same thing. I was like, I've had anthrax. I've had all these other things. This can't possibly be any worse.
Yeah. So I created a little vision around that in the final hour. I said, look, here's the bottom line. And I said this in front of hundreds of airmen at the 180th Fighter Wing. They were pretty staunch against the shot. And our numbers initially were atrocious. We thought we were going to lose more airmen than any other state in the Guard because they all said, no, I'm not taking it, because I wanted them to make a decision. But when we were at the 180th, and I said, look, if you're going to step out of the deployment line, like literally, if we get a call and we're deploying in 48 hours from now, which is what could happen, if you're not going to take your shots and you're going to step out of the deployment line, and you're literally going to drop your bags and look at your brothers and sisters in arms and tell them, good luck, guys. I'm not going. I'm not taking a shot. If you're really that at that point, then I remember I created my own vision, and my intensity came out, and I pointed at the door, and I said, "I need you to walk out right now. I don't have any more time. It's decision time. I'm sorry. You've been respectful, but if you're not going to do it, I need you to leave now because I got to replace you. That's my job." And I'm sorry.
Anybody take you up on that offer?
What's interesting, there were a couple of people that didn't take the shot, but our numbers after we went through all these town halls, this excruciating negotiation. I mean, most states weren't sharing their data, and I couldn't get it from the DC level, but I knew we maintained, I think we were still number 1 or number 2 in end strength, even after our COVID losses. So we recouped a lot that I think we would have lost. Otherwise, we just said, it's in order, do what I tell you.
Yeah.
So there's room to negotiate, give somebody the right to say no, even in a hostage situation. Chris Voss mentioned our book, Start With No, in his book, Never Split the Difference. Jim Camp Sr. coached Chris Voss in the hostage negotiation team at the FBI.
And that's how I discovered your dad's book. Me
Correct.
being an Audible guy, I'm always, DC traffic.
Yeah.
I'm listening to books on tape rather than actually reading them. I was reading Chris Voss's book. He talks about your dad's book. Then I listen to your dad's book, and the details that your dad starts to describe in this book. He says, yeah, my son's this star athlete. He's a football player, but he ended up going to Carnegie Mellon and focusing on academics. And then he became a pilot in the Air Force. And I was like, there's no way. This guy is from Ohio. I know a camp from Ohio.
Yeah.
It blew my mind to think that how small the world is, that we've worked together all these years. And I had no idea that your dad was this famous negotiator specialist that's helping the FBI hostage rescue team. I mean, mind blowing.
Yeah. I didn't talk about that. Yeah. I didn't try to, I wanted to keep the military separate from the negotiation world, but the system was ingrained in me. I had a similar story. I was driving home from Toledo from one of those town halls with my executive officer, Brittany Hensley. She's now a lieutenant colonel, squadron commander. So super proud of her. We're riding home, and she's very entrepreneurial. And we had a discussion in the car, and she was talking about what she's going to do outside of the military life. And I encouraged her. I said, what makes you successful here will make you in the outside world very successful. It's just going to be, you got to go through that transition. She was talking about her business, and I said, yeah. She's like, what are you going to do, sir? And I said, I think I'm going to go back into negotiation coaching. She goes, oh, yeah, there's the best negotiation book I've ever read is Start. I go, who wrote that? Just messing with her. She goes, and then she's like, what? No. I go, and it's Jim Sr. So it was pretty funny.
That amazing negotiation book.
Well, it was and then of course, when are you going to write yours? Right. So I had a lot of people pulling on me to write a sequel, but obviously my path is different than his. So,
yeah.
But I just put a different look on negotiation.
Well, good on them for pushing you to write that book. So if someone is reading your book and they're just going to make one change to their leadership approach tomorrow morning, what would you want that change to be?
On the way to work, remind yourself who you work for. You don't work for your boss. You report to your boss. You work for your people. Now, if you truly work for your people, to an extent, I know it's impossible for me to know all 5,000 airmen in the Ohio Air National Guard. And that's never going to happen, right? I mean, that would be a stretch. Even if I set out to shake every single person's hand and have a short conversation, it would consume an entire year. So I'm not suggesting that you have to know everybody in your organization. But if you truly feel that you work for them, then the one thing that will make a huge difference is let your guard down and connect with those people and get to know who they are. If you don't know what a good day looks like for them, you're not going to know what a bad day looks like. And if you don't, and you don't connect with your people, I think that's the number one reason right now that people are leaving organizations and moving on. They don't know anybody. And the leaders don't pretend that they care. I know they have a lot of responsibilities and other things to prioritize, but just taking the time to connect one-on-one with people is tremendously valuable. The other thing that happens when you take the time to connect with somebody that's well below your position, they're early in the organization, you may be highly tenured, you've been there forever. When you have those one-on-one conversations, that is an awesome time to kind of push your agenda and the messaging to them and help them, that one-on-one discussion, because they will take the information that you give them and they will tell their coworkers or their airmen that are standing next to them. And I'll say this, in the absence of direct, honest communication from the boss to their people, if you don't do that, they will make things up to fill the void. And that is catastrophic to any culture. So know who you work for, get to know your people, and have those one-on-one conversations.
Yeah.
It is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength as a leader to take the time to do that. Shake their hand and have some laughs. I hate that.
Yeah,
I hate. Sorry, Mike. I sat up there at headquarters and I would watch people never go out to dinner or lunch with subordinates. And I'm like, what are you afraid of? That they're not going to listen to you? Sorry. I'm very passionate about that.
I had a senior leader. We never once had coffee. We never once had lunch. We never once had dinner. Didn't know my wife's name. Didn't know I had children. And I just, as a senior military officer, you just respect, you respect the chain of command, salute smartly and move forward. But I just thought you're missing out on the buy-in that you could be getting from me by actually getting to know me. And with younger airmen today, it's all about social media. I had to learn and to appreciate social media because that is their avenue of getting information out. I've had airmen reach out to me, hey, I need you to talk to Jim because he just released a suicidal post, or hey, you need to reach out to Tom because all of a sudden he's canceled all of his social media. I'm very concerned about his well-being. I wouldn't have known that or have been involved with that if I hadn't had that social media piece. Of course, I don't do silly things on social media. I think I even have on my Facebook page, if you don't like seeing pictures of my family, my dog, or airmen that inspire me, I'm probably not the guy for you to follow. But it is a channel of communication that people still reach out to me this day that I haven't been involved with from a command perspective for years.
Same here. Things come back to you, and it's great. I mean, Major Brittany Hensley, who's now Lieutenant Colonel, reached out to me recently. Hey, will you write me a letter of recommendation for graduate school? Happy to do it. That you don't. That kind of reward is extremely rare if you don't know your people. It's not going to happen. Your picture on the wall means nothing if you're not connected to the people that look at it.
I totally agree. And so we've both gone through a lot of ups and downs. I had 24 years of service. I know that you had more than me, but looking back at your military journey, what moment made you think, this is exactly why I stayed in uniform after 9/11?
I think it's probably, I was at the 745th, the Provisional Squadron, which was interesting because there were people from all different states. All the states were represented. So it was kind of I don't want to say like a mercenary squadron. I mean, the people were there from every single unit. So there wasn't as much natural cohesion because they didn't know each other that well. But I think the moment that made me stay in uniform, when they were discussing shutting down the squadron, but I knew our customer, SOCOM desperately needed our orbits and our manned ISR platform. And I was on a conference call and I had General File, the 3-star AFSOC commander sitting next to me, and folks on the, I'm not going to mention who they were, but all the high ranking folks you ran with at the Guard Bureau know me from this moment. But I remember General File said, hey, do we need to shut the squadron down or can you guys sustain volunteerism? And I remember piping up and I said, the Guard Bureau's wrong. I'm sorry, sir, but they're wrong. I work for you. I'm on Title 10 orders in AFSOC. You're my boss. Guard Bureau's not my boss. You are. I said, our whole squadron stands ready to deploy at a moment's notice for the next year. Our full unit will deploy for a year to back up this mission. And he took it serious. And every single person in our squadron volunteered. I couldn't believe it. They were like, yeah, we'll go. Are you going? I said, yeah, I'm going to go. We didn't end up doing it because they ended up, they outranked the lieutenant colonel who had really good ideas. And they eventually wound the squadron down. But I think that was my proudest moment when, I was like, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because these people don't even have jobs to come back to. And they were so tight. We had such a tight group. And you know what? We had fun together. Right?
That means a lot. I mean, for that squadron to all agree to go forth underneath your command, I mean, you've got to be very proud of that. That is a pretty awesome experience.
Yeah, that was one of many. I mean, I could ask me an hour from now, I'll come up. I'm 58, right? So my iceberg's shrinking. But an hour from now, I'll probably come up with a different story. But yeah, that was just super inspirational for me. That's when I made the decision. I go, I'm going to go as far as I'm going to keep this leadership up and keep going because I really enjoyed it.
So Jim, as we wrap up, I always ask this question to everybody that I interview in closing. What question have I not asked that you would like to share with the listeners today?
I'm assuming a lot of listeners are transitioning vets.
Yeah.
Well, there are many things. I'll tell you what. I mean, I have the ability to give every single veteran that wants a copy of my dad's second book, because we own the rights to that on Audible. That second book is titled "No: The Only System of Negotiation You Need for Work and Home." It's a great book. It's a follow-on to Start with No. How can I help the veterans that are struggling trying to make that transition from, military to the civilian world? And so that would be the question. If you ask me, Jim, can you help these people? I'll give every single one of them a copy of our book. If they call me, I'll talk to them. I'll help them. I hope they'll have the courage to read my book. I've got good reviews so far, so I hope they find it valuable. But I'll leave it with this. The things that make you a really strong, effective leader are hand in hand with things that make you an effective negotiator. So if you're already a good leader, you can always get better, but you're going to need to negotiate in life, especially in the business world when you make that shift. So for those that are getting ready to punch and get ready to roll with their careers, regardless of what that is, keep a growth mindset. And if you reach out to me at camp negotiations, I'll figure out a way to help you. So that would be the only thing I would say, Mike. I would love to figure out a way to give back, because it's a tough transition. I'm telling you, taking off the uniform was, I'm sure you felt it. There's no easy way to do it.
It was an emotional roller coaster. My wife, she said that she just had to pretend that I had, bipolar disorder for a year, because she says you would come home with all these different ideas. Hey, we're going to open a franchise. Hey, we're going to do a small business. Hey, I'm going to go work for Lockheed Martin. Hey, I'm going to go to the airlines. I mean, it was just all over the place. She would just sit there and be like, okay, well, we'll see how it goes. Thank you.
Sure.
Until the next crazy idea came home. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And the transition is so difficult. And that's why I'm always here for folks, whether that's helping them on their LinkedIn pages, help introducing them, working on their resumes. I'm just here to help as well, like you. And your book, your Lead from No book, is on my website, but I will also add any other books or material from your website, from the camp system, to share, to vector them towards your system, because you are absolutely right. My goodness, leadership and negotiation are hand in hand.
Yep.
So thank you, Jim. I really do appreciate this.
Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing you in person next time.
Okay, buddy. Thank
Thanks,
you.
sir. See you.
All right, we'll see you.